All right, so jumping into the program diagram then, what you'll see that I did, let me just go back here and I'll show you. All I did here was turn on the few program layers that I hid. And it doesn't matter if you still have three-dimensional box volumes or if you did flat plates like I did. The idea here is that you grab all of your program blocks, whatever form they are, right-click and do select objects, and it'll select them all. And then also grab the curve that defines your property line or boundary or whatever you want to call it. And then you can Alt and just kind of yank it over with the gumball to make a copy. So this creates a, basically it's a program diagram, just like that. That's it. That's all there is to it. And so you can select the objects, make sure that you turn off those ISO curves because they're really annoying and they don't do anything for us. And then we can select it, and you probably should make 2D on this, although Illustrator might actually accept it if you don't. But we'll do a make 2D anyway, just to be sure. So I'm going to do make 2D. Make sure you have source layers checked. And I don't have to, well, yeah, we'll show hidden lines. Yeah. And then hit OK. It'll place it near the origin. Just move it away from any other objects that it might be near or over top of. And then feel free to select it and say File, Export Selected. And you can put it here. I'm going to call this one Program Diagram, AutoCAD, and then save. Back into Illustrator now. Let me turn those guides back on. All right, I can go to File, Open. I'm going to open that program diagram. Currently looks like this. Select it all, copy, and paste. Yeah, we'll merge those swatches. And then you can size it down. So don't worry too much. I forget what I was going to say about not worrying. You guys should worry about a lot of things. But anyway, so I remember what I was going to say. Don't worry about like the fill-ins and stuff right now. We're going to do that as a separate element. Okay, so that's really important. With this one, probably, I mean, you guys, you're starting to learn now at this point how to develop a diagram. But so, you know, take what I say and change it if you need to based on your own purposes. But essentially, we're going to do something that's very similar to what we just did. Yeah, so as I turn these on and off, I can start to see what elements are what. I have some hidden lines, and all of these hidden lines are kind of, you know, similar. So in most diagrams, you don't really show a difference in hidden lines. You let the visible lines do the work by showing them as either different colors or as, you know, grayscales or different thicknesses. So all of my hidden lines I'm actually going to merge onto one layer, and that's what you see me doing here. I'm going to just drag them all together and then select them all and just put them on one layer and then get rid of the rest. So let's see, I grab all those. I can select that, 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 and that. In case you're curious, if you're trying to select layers, hold Shift and click each one and it'll go. So then I'll make them black, and then I'll make them really, really thin. 0.25, like very thin, round, and with a dash line. This dash line, I'm going to make it a little bit longer, so I'll do like a 4-point dash, and then, yeah, the 4-point dash actually should be fine. You can see that it's a very fine dash line with a 6-point gap. That's what it defaulted to. So again, I'm just going to take all of those. I think I'm going to deselect that top one, and then click on the top layer, right click, and say Arrange, Send to Current Layer. So they all get put on that layer, and I can delete these three. Don't worry, if any of you guys need to see any of this again, I can go through it, but I want to get to the meat of it, right? The real idea here, and that's these objects, the program. So the program is our opportunity to look at particular elements, right? And we started to develop a color palette. In my case, I like to use grayscales, and then my accent color is like a red. So if, for instance, the elements that I want to really study in this particular composition is the open spaces, or if it's the, actually I should say, if it's the, yeah, I'll do the action spaces. So it's going to be like the stores and stuff, all of my retail spaces. So those ones are going to, I think, be my focus for this. So I'm going to choose, obviously, a black line for now. I might change it later. And I'm going to pick something that's rather thick, like even like a 4-point line. Something's missing here. Yeah, that's okay. But these ones you're probably going to want to rename. So I can call this one retail. In fact, you could probably give it like a prefix, like program, or like PROG for program, retail. This one I'm going to rename program hidden. And we'll need to make sure that we do all of these. So the second most important space is going to be the gathering spaces. And those are going to be listed. Let's make them black and make them like a 2-point line. So you see that they're prominent, but they're not the ones that jump out at you most. In fact, what you see up on screen really doesn't do it justice. It looks much cleaner on the monitor, but you know, a 4 to a 2 is a big difference. So I'm going to call these program gathering. And then we have our border. That's just going to be black and 0.5. What is this one? Oh, right. These weren't. These were not retail spaces. These were small gathering. And this one was the retail spaces. I'm okay with focusing on the small gathering spaces, I think. So I'm going to focus on those. Let's make that black. And this one's going to be a little bit thinner. So I'll jump down to like a 1, I think, on that. Program retail. Okay, so generally speaking, in terms of your line work, guys, that's pretty much done. There's not much else you have to do with that. So what I am going to do that's a little bit different here is give it like an underlay. So the way that looks now is I just go back into the easiest way. You can do it a few ways, actually, because these are just boxes. You could just trace over them if you want. But I think an easy way would be to go back into this diagram, select this not as a Make 2D, and then do an export. I'm going to call this one Program Diagram Fill. I'll open that. And it gives you everything without the hidden lines. So I can just copy that in. I can go back here. I'm going to put it on a layer, hopefully a set of layers that are lower or underneath. I'm hoping it puts them down there. It did not. It put them up top, but that's okay. You can yank this back down into the correct location. I'll shimmy this into more accuracy a little bit later. But now it's really just a function of I grab the program I want, and that's these right here. So these are my retail spaces. So I can make those have no lines at all, and then I can simply fill them in with a color. Oh wait, these aren't live paints. There. So you can fill them in with a color if you want. But you probably want to pick something that fits your what am I trying to say? You want to pick something that fits your particular color palette, right? So mine are going to be monochromes with a focus of one particular color. In this case, the focus color is red, and I didn't want to make these red. These I actually want to make, they were the retail spaces, which are my least important, so I'm going to make them the lightest gray, like that. And then I select the next spaces. These ones are my small gathering spaces. They are my focus space, so I'm going to make those red. Actually, I don't want to do that red. I want to do no line. And I want to use a K-fill. Red. Whoops, sorry. Red. All right, looks kind of funny right now, but I'll show you what this really is going to look like later. So these right now are my large gathering spaces. They're going to have also no line. I'm going to fill them with a darker gray. It'll look like that. That's fine. And then here, the key for me is that I want all of these to be underneath my program line work. So I slide that layer down. We're almost done, guys, I promise. Slide those layers down, my line work pops up on top, and then additionally, I want to take all of that stuff and I want to be able to see through it so that I can kind of see the layers, see what happens, you know, through the depth of my image. So I'm going to select all of those and change the opacity to something like 50%. Okay? So that is our program diagram. The objective here is to be able to look at our original inspiration, understand via the diagram what we collapsed the different rules into, and then actually created with it, and then go down into, you know, how do we translate that into the more pragmatic application, which is architecture and design, and that's the program diagram. So again, these are extremely simple ways of representing something that's very complex, but I think that in terms of workflow, you guys can at least communicate the idea rather swiftly with this kind of workflow. Do you have any questions? Yes?
So that rule set that we originally made, like those 3 rules, we're not going to end up putting it on the board?
Nope. I may be an outlier here on the faculty, but I don't think that actually writing down your rules on the board is as helpful, because the objective really is to get the work to speak for you, right? Like you want to be able to look at this and figure it out just by looking at the image, because that's really the test of whether or not your architecture is doing the job that you intended to be doing, right? So when I do have the rare opportunity to teach a design type element and talk about, you know, board composition and presentation, I try to tell all of my students to have the goal to not put a single word on your presentation, if it's at all possible. Sometimes it's successful, and inevitably, as you move up to higher tiers of, you know, intellectual design and academia, you almost have to. But there are certain exercises where you definitely don't, and I think this is one of them. Any other questions? All right, so I'm going to give you a little bit of time to keep moving forward on that, and then we're actually going to jump into some final thoughts about post-producing a rendering, and, you know, don't be overwhelmed. It's just some simple overlay things. I'm going to give you some Photoshop tricks and stuff like that.